got a real mixed week last week. I mean, we had some days where just required the nth degree of patience, and then we had some couple of good moving days. And as we highlighted in the morning call on Friday, the because of OPEX and the way the futures were set up, that was probably going to be a bit of a it's going to correlate to a chop fest in the futures. And we were a little bit more interested in individual equity names. And Smooth had a nice play on Tesla. That was the first one. And Dan called out Nvidia. Those were golden. Required a little bit of patience in the beginning, but they eventually worked and they really paid off. And then I think Jim had Broadcom with Avco, or actually, but I think that's a combination. Dan, you had that too.
Yeah, I followed Jim on that one. That
Yeah,
was all Jim.
yeah, but that was just a beautiful play, and you saw a bunch of our scales and everything. If you follow things like Broadcom, I mean, that is so thin and the spreads are so wide. You need to be exiting about $2 before it even approaches that underlying price. So just a little comment on that. Anyway, I have a 2 hour E-mini futures contract up, and you can see I don't have anything drawn on it. It just kind of gives it just a real black and white quick view of where we've been since late February. Just gives you just a simple sense of where we've been. You can see right in here, we've got, let's see, I like to see, right in here, that was basically those highs back at the end of March. And we tested that area and we've consolidated around that area. So let me go, let's see, I'm going to go and do this, make this a little bit cleaner. So then, I mean, this area, before we approach this area, let's see, there we go. That was like the 5327 in the ES. That's what that area. It's really quite negated at this point. But I just wanted to show, just to kind of done out, because I'm now going to go here. I just wanted a reference point. And this is where we're at. Look how we've really straddled and consolidated around that. You've got Friday, you've got Thursday, you've got Wednesday, and Tuesday we had that really nice move up. So that shows you where we're at. Most importantly, where are we now and what do we expect for the day? We're straddling the 53.33 area. That proved as some resistance last week on a few trades, and it's smack dab in the middle as a little bit of a pivot or point of control, if you will. My expectation right now is that it's really simple. That if we get under 53, 23, 24 again, we simply can go down and trade down to 53.06. And if we get above 53.37, we can go back and test that high at 53.49, 53.50. And there again, 53.50, another one of those kind of gamma round number areas that the market, I mean, it responds to very accurately. So I think that we are in this range right here. Well, we are in this range, and I would expect that we're going to stay there until we simply move above this area or we move down in here. There's really nothing else to be thinking about the market. So now there's your reference with that. And then simply have your eye on bonds and NDX to see what they're doing as some sort of correlation. So before you go ideally this 53, 25, 26 should prove as some support for a trade, because it's a very defined risk area. You know that you're risking basically 2 points. And if it trades down below, you're exposed to the move down here. If this breaks below here, the 53.24 area, it can easily just trace back to this VPOC from Thursday, or actually that's Friday, 53.19. So and you'd probably have a little bit of a retrace, and that's what you want, because then that area prove as some sort of resistance, if you will. So those are some definable levels to consider at the start of the day. When in doubt, don't do anything. Just make sure you got a clean slate so you know where the boundaries, the edges are, and then see what else is going on, and then look at the chat in the room and see what we're thinking about. With that, I will yield to Dan.
Morning, everybody. Share my screen here. I'm going to start with sort of this here to reiterate sort of what David was saying. Let me actually go to, actually, let me spread this out a little bit. So we have, this is all the way back to Wednesday, so the CPI move. So the prior all-time high was 33.50. So we are just churning around there right now. My expectation, sort of like David's, is a narrow range down from sort of the top of this box area. If we really get moving to the downside, we do need to at some point retest this breakout area from CPI. My expectation is actually not that. My expectation right now is that we're going to hold this right now 25, 24 area, which whatever the spread opens at, it's going to be 5,300 is the area that I'm expecting to hold. If we do trade below that, I just the same as David. I think that we could go down and see this 53.06 area, which is this wick from Friday, that you saw clear buyers come right off of that. And on 30-minute, you see it really easily here, is that you see that buyer and pushing right back up into the range that was from Thursday, the day after CPI. So clearly the demand was here. So what are we going to wait for? Is we're going to wait for where that demand was to long, or we can wait for where the supply was, up in here and up in here. So there's a couple of areas that I'm looking at solely for a trade. 25, so 25 would be right here, which would be this sort of candle here. Let's see if I can actually mark it. So 25 would be right here. That's the area where we broke out of, retested, and went. So that's going to be one area that I'm interested in watching. If it happens right at the open, I'm a little less interested in it, because things can get a little slippery and we can get stopped out, and it can be a waste of money. But that's an area I'm going to be watching today. This area in the overnight high of 37, that's an area that we could watch today too. I want to see if that breaks, and if that breaks, 37 breaks, we're going to go back up here most likely. So a break of 37 might give us a nice little long to 47.49. You know, there's that. That's not my favorite trade to do, but it's one that might have some strength today. So something that I am watching that's really of interest to me is, and you all know I like to play this because I like to play UB because it trades very technically. It holds supports. It listens to resistance for the most part, unless there's news. But and it moves nicely where you can get a nice trade. You can knock it over your skis where you can get some scales and let it work. This area right here of 123.12. You saw it right here from Friday. So this was Friday previous, the May 10th. So you saw that come up here, reject, come up here, reject, got all the way up, broke out. All right, this is sort of the scene of the crime, where it broke out here, got all the way to 126.08, and now has retraced all the way back to the scene of the crime here. So this 123.12 is a pretty big area. You can see on, what was that, CPI? CPI, that initial crazy move you get on CPI with bonds and stuff. Where'd that wick end? 123.12. So let's see if that holds here. If it doesn't, I expect us to go right back into this range, and that voids any trade on UB. A long on UB would be sort of down in this 12-13 area. If we break below that, you can see all the levels that are down below it. It becomes a messy trade when you have all these levels. So if we're going to continue up on UB, 120, 123.12 is the spot. So what do bonds mean for sort of the market? Doesn't mean anything for SPX and QQQ. They don't care anymore. It's a correlation we used to use a lot. It doesn't seem to matter right now. At some point that may change, but it's just one that just doesn't seem to matter. The small caps and RTY, let me go back to that. They're the ones that it seems to matter the most for. You can see today it's followed that move right down with UB. So it seems to be following UB, and you're seeing RTY sort of back in this support area here. Let's see. Does RTY sort of stay in this area? Does it come and push back up? Depends on what bonds do. If bonds hold, I expect RTY to come and push back up too. So there's multiple ways you can trade that sort of correlation. I've been using this a lot when we've had these very uninteresting SPX and NQ days and moves where I'm expecting a tight small range and sort of a boring day in SPX. Where's a spot for a trade? I think this is one that we can find where there might be a decent trade either in RTY or in UB. Single stock side, this is the big one I'm going to be watching today. They have earnings tonight, Palo Alto Networks. You've got this was their last earnings here. They dropped from whatever this was, 360 down to 330. So dropped down and then continued to gap down almost another, I don't know what, $70. So it's churned all the way back here, getting close to the area of this gap. If they have a decent earnings, I suspect they will. That's my gut feel, is that company does not put in bad quarters very often. We fill this gap up here, and there's a possibility of a new all-time high. I'm long this one via equity. I'm not going to be playing options. Probably. We'll see if we do get a decent sell on it today by some chance. That might be something that I look at as an upside options lottery play. But with that, I will turn over to you, Lee.
Thank you.
Sorry, Smooth. So, guys, relative to Palo Alto, I made a comment in the room. I think I posted last night, and Dan made a comment off it this morning. I mean, I basically kind of shifted to an 80% cash position through Thursday and through to Friday. Reality is we had a nice almost 10-day move. I think maybe exactly 10-day move. So the equities were all working really, really well. It's very unusual to have 10 solid green days. That's a rarity. And now we're rolling into earnings. That's why it's like you got to scale. So I basically reduced everything to about 8th position. So I still have exposure on a number of these things, but I just wanted to be in a good cash position in the event that, maybe the guidance is poor on one of them, or something is an outlier, that I'm in a cash where I can go in and let it drop 50, 60, 70 points, and then maybe go in and be prepared to kind of, get a little long at some really stretched levels.
And so that's a perfect name for that. Just the fundamental story of the cybersecurity, and it's the best cybersecurity company fundamentally in my book. So I'm with you. I think that's a great plan, and that's certainly a good way to play it.
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that, Lee.
No worries. I just actually took some HIMS long around 1550. They just announced GLP-1 injections they're going to be selling, which is a pretty big market. So I think that's a decent play. I just pulled it up here on the screen. It's got to get over 1588 and then, can run up higher. And I probably would stop out below 1488. So I just took a little bit of equity in that. Let me go back here. I'll touch real quick on the indexes. Still the same sort of spot. This 50, 32, 50 is an area that is the prior all-time high over here. So we've kind of been grinding around that level for 3 or 4 days. So keep that on watch for sure. And then just touch on this chart real quick. This is a daily chart. This is 2021 when we kind of peaked, and then we came down here, and this is October 22. So using these Fibonacci's, which have been respected on the way up, when we zoom in, it kind of puts us into this range here. So this is kind of sort of the outside areas that we've been sort of trading up to, rejecting, and then supporting down here. So it's this 51 on the high side and 53.1275 on the low side. So that's kind of sort of the outside areas that I'm watching for sort of the next leg, up or down. So, breaking over here or breaking below here kind of will put us into a different range. So right now, this is kind of the range that I'm expecting. And then when we kind of go back into a little smaller time frame, we've found support here for now. This is from Friday's high, which was around 28.50. And, we've kind of bounced on there a few times. So that seems to be a decent support area where you could take a long for now. And then the overnight high is just above this pivot here at 35.50, and we got up to 37.25. You'll notice here too, the point of control is at 32.50, and it was there Thursday as well. So what's significant about 32.50? This Fibonacci and this all-time high. So it's no secret why the point of control has been there. That's where the volume's trading at. So that's a really key level to get away from, either up or down. So that's really it for me on the indexes. The guys gave you enough there. Tesla, I'm still long off of this inverse pattern we got in around 172. Our stop would be below, 168 down here, but I've already scaled half my position, and we scaled up around 178. So if it stops that, I still made money, but I think this can keep on going. Where's my targets? If we keep pushing up today or tomorrow, back up here, 179.67 was the high, so we got to get over there, and then we're targeting this 181 to 181.50 area would be from Wednesday high, and then really ultimately getting to this Fibonacci at 187.43. But long term, as I told you last week, the measured move on this is going to be up here right around this 61.8 at 217. So if we can really get this thing going, then it can really get a nice ride. We got all the major moving averages behind us now, except for the 200-day, which is kind of in that same area. So that's what I'm targeting there. Dan mentioned PanW. This is kind of getting up into this gap. They've got earnings this week, so that'll be interesting to watch. NVIDIA, be careful. Earnings week, premiums are going to be crazy. But we're kind of below this level here, 938 and 922 on the low side. So if we can get back up and test these areas, then these are the levels that we rejected here. So I'll be watching that, but probably the better play on NVIDIA is playing something in sympathy like AMD, SMCI, Avgo. Those kind of plays are probably sort of sympathetic towards NVIDIA if you want to play the semi. And then the only other thing I was looking at that has earnings this week is Zoom. This has a nice setup within a harmonic. You've got a couple of key resistance points here, the 61.8, the 200-day here. But it may be a fun earnings play, see what the premiums are looking like. but that's just one that I've been looking at.
There was another earnings play that I wanted to mention to you for you to look at, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, and maybe it's something you can do after, but ELF, ELF. That's sort of a makeup play, very similar to Ulta, higher multiple name, but had an insano run and seemed to find support here.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that kind of stares me in the face is a Head and Shoulders there. But you've got the 200-day down here at 145.64.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily bullish or bearish on it. The multiple's like 5 times what Ulta is. That I was looking at it as sort of a long Ulta, short ELF type thing. But you know, I mean, I haven't. I think they report Thursday, so we have time to sort of watch and see what it does. But
Wednesday, yep. I mean, my lean would be short if I had to take a position, because you've got this Head and Shoulders looking setup. But I don't like to short into a 200-day. But there's still some room there. There's
or earnings, and I'll do a little more work on it. I sort of just briefly looked at it this morning, but it was definitely one on that earnings sheet that caught my eye.
Well, look, we're HIMS is now 55.88. Actually took a, let me see here. Sorry, I was just trying to get a scale on that. This could go crazy, actually. I think that's a pretty big news. We see what that does when the market opens. All right. Well,
the only thing about HIMS is it's one of those names that the anti-woke crowd doesn't like because of their publicity stuff that they did with sort of Palestinian Gaza protest people. So that's the only thing that I would think would be a headwind for that thing really running. But it could be a short squeeze setup because of that too.
Right. Yeah, and this is kind of the key level here where we kind of rejected early at 17 and change. But yeah, I mean, see how this reacts when the market opens. I got a little bit of a scale on it now, so see if it can run. And that's it. So have a good day. We'll be in the chat, and yeah, we'll just wait for things to set up. Be patient, and the trade will come.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Good. All right, everybody. We'll talk later.